Neverwinter Nights prestige classes. They're just not worth it. Change my mind. That's what we're going to jump into with this Neverwinter Nights Tactica vlog. And as always, no spoilers. We're going to talk tactics. We're going to talk classes. But the actual modules, the actual quests, that's up to you to adapt based on the character that you're playing. Now, Neverwinter Nights is essentially the D&D 3.5 3.x engine. And what you see is it's the genesis. It's the birth of the D20 system with a difficulty check. Essentially, for every action that you can take, if you equal or beat a number, you're successful. Now, old school D&D, you had this with armor class and other effects. But if you wanted to do something in the game, essentially the DM would say yes or no, the dungeon master, or they'd come up with some sort of attribute test. It was very, very open-ended. 3.5, 3.x streamlined that and took it to the next level where everything was assigned this difficulty check. So essentially in your primary character's role, the metagame was you just jacked up all of your skills, all of your attributes, everything. So before you even roll that D20, you've got like a plus 25 to hit or on a certain check. And if we look at the suggested difficulty levels, they don't keep up with how fast a character progresses, going to level 20 before we even get into the epic stuff. So what you would see is a base character. If I have to make a skill check and every time I level up, I'm dumping in, a skill point or 2 skill points because it's a trained skill, I've got a plus 5, a plus 8, a plus 10, plus 15, plus 20 before I roll, plus the bonus from my attributes, plus the bonus from magic items. So this idea of the DC, the difficulty check. Because of that, it's just a test one versus the other. What you'll see is most players will focus on one character class. So whatever that character class is, let's say I'm playing a wizard, the difficulty checks to beat spell resistance or to beat saves or damage, I'm going to pour everything into that. Every single level that I'm leveling up goes to fuel to beat the DC or not be able to beat the DC if it's happening against me, right? Defensively and saving throws and things like that. When you start to dilute the character class, so if I'm a level 5 wizard and I take a character class, I take a level in another character class, I'm diluting the difficulty checks and I'm not really gaining anything to be powerful enough. So that's why primarily what you see is this idea of taking one character class. Now we're looking at the framework. Neverwinter Nights, you can take up to 3 character classes. Now obviously it depends on the level cap that you're playing in. If I'm playing a module that's going to end at level 10 or level 8 or level 5, that limits my character classes effectively as opposed to if I'm going into the epic levels. But what you see here is the ability to take feats that are inherent in other character classes by dipping into a level or 2. Let's say I'm playing a sorcerer and I want it to be kind of a close combat weapons-based sorcerer. I want to be able to use some weapons. I want to be able to focus on that. I could take feats that unlock, that build on simple weapons. I could take feats that will give me martial weapons and maybe exotic weapons, and maybe I take light armor and medium armor because I say, well, I'll put up with the spell failure, possible arcane spell failure, because I've got so many spells as a sorcerer. I'm just going to spam it out. I could build that. Then I could take my sorcerer or spells and jack up my weapons and jack up other things and have a pretty interesting character to play. But I've wasted a lot of feats to do that I want to pump into meta magic feats. What a lot of players will do, will take one level of fighter. One level of fighter. It's not that much diluting it, but it opens up as a fighter first level, you gain all these feats. So you do see some players that while they focus on their primary character class, they might dip into a few levels or one level of other character classes to build a more robust character to play. So within that, the D&D 3.5 system, now that we've got that framework, the pen and paper, the tabletop was built with this understanding you weren't limited by character class. You could jump in with as many different character classes as you want, and there's going to be some diluting of those character classes, but you could play stuff like a rogue, wizard 1, fighter 1, this 5, that 5, and just level up and level up and level up. So this idea was then kind of built upon where let's have prestige classes. These are classes that you have to qualify for. You just can't be straight out. And they have abilities potentially beyond the regular character classes. A great example, if we look at Rogue, Shadow Dancer. So the Rogue has got stealth. We're just going to look at one area to framework this. If I play a Rogue, I'm going to have stealth. I'm going to have the dexterity bonus. If I play the Shadow Dancer, I take a level there. Level 1, hide in plain sight, the ability to just vanish. Now, I have to have a high enough check to do that. I'm building up my DC. I'm building up my skills. But it's a prestige class that lets you kind of break some of the roles that balance out the original classes. The challenge here is you need things to qualify. Now, some are easier than others. An example would be Red Dragon Disciple. I'm probably going to take some lore anyway as a bard. I might take lore, the minimum, as a sorcerer to ignite that dragon blood. And then there we go. I'm in. But some of the prestige classes have such a buy-in to them where you have to ask yourself, going back to the original idea of D&D 3.x just being beating DC classes, can I afford to dilute my character class? Can I afford to take some feats to qualify that may not be bad feats per se? Like going back to Shadow Dancer, dodge and mobility are nice to have, but there are other feats to a rogue or bard build that I want to focus on. By pulling away to do that, it's not making me as effective. I realize there has to be some balance in there, but every time you stack in other character classes, you're taking away from the original. And some of the prestige classes add value. A lot of them don't. And some of the prestige classes, you're just going to take to dip in one level. A lot of players will just dip in Shadow Dancer to get that hide in plain sight. Daze, Shadow Lord, yeah, it's cool to have some more clickies, but they're not game changing. And by the time you can qualify for that prestige class, you've kind of moved on to potentially better and other things. On top of that, Red Dragon Disciple is really good to dip in 1 or 2, 3, maybe 5 levels, but beyond that, just so I can get some wings, no. So you very rarely see with the prestige classes taking them to the full out, similar to another character class. I understand the concept of why they tried to do it in D&D 3.5 tabletop. I don't think they did it very well. There was a lot of bloat, and with removing all character restrictions, everyone's doing everything what they want, and character class isn't really a thing anymore in that edition, so they had to kind of cap it with the prestige classes. I understand why they did it in Neverwinter Nights to sell that X pack, that expansion pack. It's kind of cool, but I really, especially in some of the harder custom modules that are out there, I really question the worth of it. Change my mind. Yes or no?